There's so much power in doing things scared because you cannot wait until you have the confidence to do something before you do it. Like you have to just do it and know that the confidence is going to come. I tell my practicum students that in this field, it feels a little bit like you're getting thrown into the deep end of the pool and you don't know how to swim. There's just no real way to prepare you for having that first session with a client and being like, what am I doing?
Ready to transform your relationships and elevate your therapy practice? Look no further. Meet Krysteena, a licensed therapist in Idaho, specializing in healing relationships for individuals and couples. She owns a growing group therapy practice and a second business that helps therapists build sustainable, profitable private practices. Krysteena is dedicated to advocating for newer therapists and bridging the gap in practical business and career skills left out by graduate programs. Her mission is to redefine what it means to be a therapist by promoting authenticity, connection, and personal agency. Join her on this journey to transform therapy and create thriving practices. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more interviews like this one. And thank you so much, Krysteena, for being here today. It is such a pleasure to have you. And we were just talking about this. I've known you for 14 years, which is insane. You were one of the first people that I became friends with in grad school. But I would love for you to just kind of dive into your journey, how you got here today, and then we're going to go a little deeper as well as we go on.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you asked me to do this, and it's really great to be able to still stay in touch and connect. I can't believe it's been 14 years. Yeah, so we met in 2010 when we both started our graduate program. We were the youngest people in the cohort, I'm pretty sure, right? Which I thought was something kind of interesting just in regards to my journey. I feel like people who maybe were a little bit more advanced in their life or career had a slightly easier time, maybe because they had more support or resources, but we can maybe get into that later. Wow, how do I sum up 14 years? That's been so much.
I know.
Okay, so graduated a master's in clinical psychology, specializing in marriage and family therapy in 2012. I actually, right after grad school, went to work for an integrative medical office because I needed something that paid my bills. And it was kind of like a startup medical office. It was just me and like one provider. And over the course of a few years, I grew with the company. I was like their care manager and I did marketing and HR and kind of wore a lot of hats. I get myself into these positions somehow. Grew it to like 6 different providers. So that was a great experience. And it did help me pay my bills because at the time, and things have changed in California, but at the time, therapists did not, it was not typical to get paid after you graduated. So you still had to essentially have 2,500 extra intern hours, right? As I'm sure you remember. And because we were not fully licensed, we couldn't bill insurance. And so companies didn't want to pay us. And so I spent about a year and a half, working at the medical office. And then on the side, I was trying to find a job as a therapist. And I would get really far in these interviews. And then I would get to the place where they're like giving me an offer. And I'd say, well, what is the pay? And I remember specifically like a couple of places looking at me and they're like, oh, no, this is not a paid position. I was like, I've gone through all these interviews. So at one point, I think this is a really pivotal part of my journey, actually, where I had a connection who was a case manager at a treatment facility in Topeka Canyon or something. And I lived near downtown LA, so it was quite a drive, but I was so desperate. I was like, I just need anything, and I have a connection. So I go there to meet with, the director of the company, and my friend comes out, or acquaintance, and she's like, he's not going to meet with you. And I was like, well, why not? And she said, he looked at your resume and said, you don't have enough experience. I was like, okay, so I'm trying to get experience after grad school, but no one would hire me because I didn't have experience in the field. Like through grad school, I was working at restaurants. That was like the best way I could pay my bills. So I ended up leaving really distressed. And then later I called the company and I was like, I'm going to talk to this guy. So I was like, he just has to meet me. And then like, maybe he'll like me, maybe I could get this job. And he cut me off right away. I did get on the phone with him, but he cut me off right away. He was like, you just don't have enough experience. This is a really hard population. Like, we need someone who has experience working with this population. And I was like, listen, I have my master's degree. Like, I need to get experience in order to get my hours, to get licensed, to have a career in this field. I was like, how am I supposed to get experience if no one will hire me? And he just responded with, go work at a group home. And I was like, okay. And so I hung up the phone and I started looking for group homes. So long story short, I found a spot in a residential facility that did pay. It was only $12 an hour. It was part-time. I was working my full-time job. And then at night from like 6 to 11, I'd work at this group home. And then on the weekends, I'd work there. And it was kind of a group home. It was like a center for teen girls that had significant behavioral issues. And we were kind of trying to rehabilitate them. But a lot of the times we just saw them get worse because working with teens is really challenging and they had really difficult family dynamics. It was a very, very hard job. I lasted a year because my personal therapist at the time was like, you got to just stick it out a year, just stick it out a year, like get the experience. But I remember I would drive home crying sometimes because I was so frustrated and the stories were so sad. I mean, I got chairs thrown at me. I got spit on. One girl like broke a window, like a big glass window. I had to call the police. It was just this whole thing, right? And so I went through, 3-ish years. And in 2015, I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't work the two jobs. I wasn't really able to pay my bills. I couldn't pay back my student loans. I had family in Idaho. I decided to move to Idaho with the full intention that I was going to leave the field. Like, I was just like, I don't have enough money to become a therapist. Like, it seems kind of ridiculous, but I don't have enough money to be a therapist. And so I'm just going to start over. I'm just going to like throw my master's degree away. I'm going to get some starting position at some other company. I was like researching, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I ended up meeting someone in Idaho who was in a counseling program, and she connected me with some people. And long story short, they were like, I think you could get licensed here. So I tried to get licensed. I was denied by the board because there's no reciprocity, among the states. They actually had me go back to school. I had to take 18 more credits, which took me about, I don't know, 9 months or so to get, and another like $8,500. But I did it. And the only reason I kept going was because I actually found a job here in Idaho at a community mental health agency. And they saw my potential, and I think they kind of felt bad for my story. And they're like, I can't believe you have years of experience and like you can't get a license. This is all just politics and bureaucracy. It's ridiculous. So they gave me a management and a supervisory position on a salary, which I was like, thank God I had never had a salary position before. So that was a thing that kept me afloat until I got licensed in Idaho. I stuck with that agency for 3 years. I learned a ton. And then I opened my private practice in 2018, and I've been in private practice for almost 5 years. And now I try to support other therapists who are having a hard time in this field, because I don't think anyone should have to go through what I went through. I mean, I used to say that if I believed in signs from the universe, like the universe was telling me blatantly, like, you are not meant for this field. You cannot do this. You cannot hack this. And for a long time, I thought it was me. Like, I thought I couldn't cut it. Something was wrong with me. I wasn't good enough. I didn't have good enough connections. I was doing something wrong. I don't think that anymore. I've heard a lot more stories of people who have really challenging histories. I mean, similar to you too. And I just don't know why it's this way. And I don't think it should be this way. And so I kind of have this like mission now of trying to change the narrative, and we'll see where I go with it.
Yes. I mean, I know so many therapists listening that maybe want to start a private practice have been in this situation. I know in different capacities, like my story was like 15 an hour, and it was just like I couldn't survive in Southern
Yeah.
California. And I had left the field. My story was a little bit different, but I think it's so important to see all the triumphs and obstacles you've had to overcome, and yet you still came out on top and you persevered through it, and it made sense, and it wasn't anything that you were doing wrong or anything like that, but it was more of just the environment and changing that environment, because California is different than other states,
It is.
to
Yeah.
say the least, just like financially, but also the regulations and everything else, that different boards, different requirements, all the things. But I'm really curious because if somebody is a new therapist listening and they are struggling through that of, okay, well, I don't know if I'm meant for this field or I'm not getting paid enough. Like, I mean, it has changed a lot since like we were in practicum and
Mhm.
internship and whatnot. But what have you seen? Because you work with so many newer therapists as well now, and you also are a supervisor and you have interns and people, practicum students. But what would you say is something that they struggle with at that tipping point, that pivotal moment of like, okay, do I want to stay in this field or am I really meant for this? How do you think that conversation has been navigated with all the people you work with now?
Since starting my second business, doing, business coaching type things for therapists and being more of a mentor, I've heard so many stories of therapists all across the country that have had just these outrageous first experiences in the field, like with supervisors, with professors telling them that they'll never make it in private practice, that they can't start a business, that you can't make money as a therapist. And like, this could not be further from the truth. You know, it's really hard when you don't know any different, like in the beginning, right? You're still kind of getting acclimated to the field,
Yeah.
but you have to pave your own way. Like you just have to believe that I am worth more and I can do that. And starting a private practice is much easier than people think it is, than people are told it is. There are so many people that need counseling right now, especially since the pandemic. Like, there is no shortage of clients. Like, we need more therapists, really. And so, we need therapists that can give good care and that can specialize, and you can do that in a private practice. And I mean, I was even just talking to someone the other day, like a newer therapist, and there's such an old mentality of this almost like hierarchical type things where, therapists who have been in the field for a while are kind of looking at these newbies and they're like, well, I had to put in my time, and so you have to put in your time. And I don't understand that at all. Like, my whole mission is to make things easier on people, right? I have no doubt that it takes a special kind of person to be in this field.
Mhm.
And really good people, really good therapists are like being burnt out and, getting super discouraged their first, second year in the field because they're like, I went into this field to help people and I just feel like I'm being beaten down and like not empowered and not taught good skills. And so it's so hard because, again, you really have to push against like the narrative. You kind of have to just believe that, okay, some of the messages that I'm hearing, I know are not the truth. And I have to like stick with what my truth is and know that I can make it in this field and that I'm worth getting paid a decent salary and that, I'm worth like good supervision and good training. Because there's a lot of really horrible supervisors out there too. I had one of them.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think just stick on your own path and try to drown out the noise as best you can and find good supports. Like, find a good supervisor, find a mentor like that is doing what you want to do, that they can keep empowering you and encouraging you to move forward.
Absolutely. And I think that's the same in entrepreneurship because you are an entrepreneur when you are starting a private practice, but
Totally.
it's the same concept of paving your own path. It's never been done before the way you want to do it because yes, there's so many different private practice, but specialties and how you want to have your office look and everything. Because I was watching your Instagram story this morning and I was like, oh, that looks so cool. But like just how you want to set it up, how you want that environment to be. And it's the same with how you're paving your career, whether it's private practice for therapy, whether it's chiropractor, whether it's a dentist, whether it's a business coach, whatever it may be, all the different areas that we can think of. But I think it's realizing that if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to be able to. And sometimes it isn't the right fit, but I think it's when you have bad supervision and like all these obstacles in your way that prevent you from seeing, okay, there is light at the end of the tunnel, if I just stick it out or find a different way and using a different lens, just even like in therapy, it's asking those questions to kind of get your mind thinking in different capacities. But I'm curious because going from working in the community, mental health and residential and all the different aspects that you've worked in, what was the final push for you to be like, okay, I want to do private practice, or I'm ready to take this leap?
I always knew that I wanted to have my own business. Like since before I even knew I wanted to be a therapist, I've always had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. And I wanted a career that I could wear on my back, essentially, where like my brain was the most important part of the business and I could use that to make money, right? And not be stuck in an office all day. With therapy, I realized that that was challenging because we are bound by the jurisdiction of our license, right? Like that was something I didn't realize either. Like, oh, you get licensed in one state, and it's like not that easy to get licensed in another state if you ever want to move or something. But the final push for me was that I was getting married in 2018 in October. And the company I worked for was good, but it was still a company. I got like 2 weeks off a year. And I had used up my time earlier in the year I had like a minor surgery. It wasn't a big deal, but I didn't have any more time to take off for my wedding. And I wanted to take off like a chunk of time for my wedding. So I just decided, all right, this is as good a reason as any. So I literally like put in my, notice so that my last day was like the Friday before I got married. And then I got married, I took some time off and I jumped right into my private practice. I need more time off. And so this is how I'm going to do it.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a really good point, because I think a lot of times, I don't know if you felt this way. Like, I mean, it sounds like you did in that instance, but for me, when I was a therapist, I felt like I could never take time off because I didn't want to be away from my clients. And like, especially if they were high risk. And I mean, I worked in private practice, so it wasn't too high risk, just like a handful of clients that were,
Mhm.
and I would see them like twice a week, but I felt like I could never take a vacation, or I missed out on so many opportunities. So working with the newer therapists that you're working with that want to go into private practice, I'm curious, do you hear that a lot, where people are like, I just want that freedom, I want that time freedom, and be able to use the time that works best for me versus having to answer to someone?
Yeah, I think that's a big pull for private practice because you can create a schedule that matches around your life. Like there is not one good schedule. I mean, some therapists will be with their kids during the day and they have a couple sessions at 8 and 9 p.m. Like that works for people. And I want to comment too on the idea of like, I can't take time off because my clients will need me. And I think this is a really big misconception too. I consider myself a modern therapist, right? And I would say this is like an old way of thinking about therapy where we sort of like fragilize our clients, right? And we think that they can't live without us. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. We have to be role models of what it means to be healthy and what it means to take care of yourself. And that means having a good balance. And I've been so surprised time and time again where I've had to take off time for, an unexpected thing that comes up in my life. And my clients are like, yes, do it. Take the time. You need it. We support you. We'll wait for you. Like they've just been so amazing. And we don't allow people to even kind of show that side of them if we don't give them the opportunity to do that, right? If we think I have to be here all the time. And yes, like showing up, being consistent, being accountable, all that is great role modeling too. But we have to take care of ourselves so that our clients can see like, hey, it's okay. If you need to take time off for your family or for something you're going through, do that, right? That's what's going to keep you well. I see my clients now in private practice every other week. And sometimes I see them once a month, which when we were in school, I remember my supervisor saying, if you don't see someone every week, then they're not actually doing therapy. And I have not found that to be true either. Like people get just as much out of it coming in a couple times a month or one time a month if they're, maintaining than they would every week. Like we have busy lives. Like, can you have an appointment every week? That's a lot, You got to
It
live your
is.
life and practice the skills that you learn in between when you come back.
It's a good point, and I'm glad that you said that, because I do notice that you are very modern in your approach, and I think that's so important, and it's a new wave, because I think the old school thinking, that's how I was trained as well, and
Mhm.
like in school, that's what it was. Like, I mean, I remember professors, it's like once a week you see your client, like in practicum classes and whatnot. But I do think that there's that level of consistency and accountability, but at the same time, you're human. And it took me like extreme burnout for my supervisor to be like, okay, you need to take some time, because it was so much. And I was dealing with so many personal things. but not being able to be fully focused. And when you're able to take that time off, you're able to just be showing up better as well. Because I think it's just that consistency, as long as they know you're there, but at the same time, they're more than capable. I think a lot of us, when we started in grad school, were trained that way. And I think it has shifted so much. And now that more people are seeing the benefit and the value of therapy, especially since the pandemic, I've like seen this whole growth, and all of my therapist friends are like, yeah, I'm like booked capacity. I'm like, oh, good. But it's crazy how that shifts, because, therapy used to be so taboo, or you don't talk about it. Or I remember when I was 16 going to therapy, and I would tell people, oh yeah, I just have a doctor's appointment, because I was like so embarrassed, because it's like, oh, I don't want to tell people I need therapy. But it's just, I love how it's evolved so much, and more therapists are showcasing and talking about things and on social media. And that brings me to my point of social media. You have like exploded on social media. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started like promoting your business, but also just helping other newer therapists as well?
So I took to social media at the end of last year for this business coaching business. I don't even have a website for it. Instagram is like my platform for everything. It's my main marketing platform. And I just kind of made a decision. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I want to know how to do it, because I had tried to do some Instagram marketing for my private practice years ago. And it was like throwing spaghetti at the wall. I didn't really know what I needed to do to get people to like something or to follow me. And so I would kind of keep up with it, but I wasn't really seeing it as part of my job duties. It was kind of like, if I have time, I'll do an Instagram post, whatever. But with this business, I was like, okay, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to learn it. So I just started researching. I mean, I watched YouTube videos, I listened to podcasts, I followed content creators. I was just wanted to absorb everything that I could about Instagram and what gets people to both follow you and then also to nurture your current audience.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a whole thing. Like we could have a whole, I don't know, at least an hour-long session talking about how to grow on Instagram. But the most important thing, I think, in regards to my growth is I started treating it like part of my job. So I get in every morning, and that is my social media time. I do a post. I prepared content. I love ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT to help me prepare content and come up with ideas and brainstorming. And then I put it in a little Google Drive document. So I know what I'm going to be talking about almost on any given days. I mean, I switched it up a little bit now, but having like a structure to it and then treating it as part of my job really helped me be consistent. And that's a huge part about growth on social media, is like you have to be consistent. And you don't even have to post every day necessarily. It will help you grow faster if you do it every day. But if you can only sustain, 3 times a week, do that, but don't skip a week. Like 3 times every week. You got to like stay at the front of people's minds. Like they need to know that you're still there and you didn't just drop off and disappear. And it's been so fun connecting with other therapists all over the world. Like it's kind of been crazy hearing about what therapists are doing over in the UK, or even there's some in India, or I have some in Australia, and the similarities, the differences. And it really became a community, which if you would have asked me this a year ago, I probably would have been like, okay. Instagram community. Okay, that's just what people say as part of the marketing scheme, but it really is. And I mean, I met a therapist in New York through Instagram, and I actually had one of my past clients move to New York. They reached out to me, said, hey, can you see me in New York? I said, no, I'm not licensed in New York, but I know someone who can. And they ended up booking with the therapist in New York.
Love that.
And we got like an information release and like can chat about it and stuff now. I'm like, I met this person on Instagram. Like, this is crazy. It's been a huge community builder and kind of a support system for me. Like, I just see a bunch of therapists trying to grow their businesses, trying to figure it out, looking for guidance. I love being a mentor. And so if you kind of look at it that way, both as this is a part of my job, and also like really just focus on building that community and building authentic community, then you're sort of just bound to grow.
Absolutely. Because I think that's a big part of it, being able to connect, being able to show like your real authentic self and being transparent. And I think you do such a beautiful job of being transparent of the stories and all the things that you've had to endure on this journey. Because I remember in the beginning, and it was rough. It was very rough.
Yeah.
But I think that's how it just speaks volumes to if you stick with it and find a different path. It doesn't have to be the path that you're taught, because a lot of times, and we've had multiple conversations about this in grad school, you learn like the theory about it and maybe a little practice, but not how to build a private practice. I know in my doctorate program, we had one class about building a private practice,
Oh,
which was
really?
helpful, but I mean, it was like all these years of other things that I was struggling and trying to figure out. If you don't want to work in like nonprofits or a community, you're basically getting paid pennies unless you're in private practice or find other ways. And I love that you've taken it to having a second business, being able to coach and mentor other therapists. And you created a course recently too. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did. I have a startup your private practice course, which if you don't have any business skills, if you are kind of new to that world, this literally takes you step by step of everything that you need to do to start a business, from registering your business to appropriate ways to set up your bank accounts, to preparing for taxes, to setting up your marketing channels, to creating paperwork, to thinking about time boundaries and financial boundaries. So it's really great for the newbie who maybe is in grad school and wants to get into a private practice right after grad school, or maybe they've been working in the agency or nonprofit and they want to get into a private practice. It really walks you through everything. So I call that step one. And then I also have a step two, which is a membership. It's a low-cost monthly membership where I teach therapists marketing. So you get into kind of like an exclusive group. There's other therapists that are trying to grow their practice, fill their practice. A lot of times they're looking to maybe market for private pay. You know, maybe they have a little bit higher fees, or they just don't want to be on insurance panels. I have a couple therapists in there who are actually looking to scale and trying to find ways to market their business to sell like a product online, like a workbook or something like that. So it's a great place to learn about these kind of newer ways of marketing, especially a lot of online and digital marketing. And it's $47 a month. There's a discount code I can maybe give you. We can put in the show notes if you want to get your first month for $9. But yeah, it gives you a lot of info and a lot of training that we never got in grad school about how to actually make money in this field.
Yes, yeah, because it's interesting because when you start in the field, I never really thought about money. I was just like, okay, it'll just happen kind of thing. But
Right.
because you're in the helping profession, that you're not really supposed to ask for money or like charge higher fees or anything like that, or have to go on insurance panels just to pay the bills. What are your thoughts around that? Because I know you've had
Yes.
experience on both ends.
So I was the same as you. I money was not an important thing for me, but having a stable life was. And I just sort of assumed that, well, if I get my master's degree, I'm going to get paid a decent salary, right? So I should be able to live comfortably. And no, that's not the reality at all. Like most people know, I feel like that's a huge flaw in all education. Is it really doesn't teach you anything about like the practical life and how to create a sustainable career,
Basically.
Yeah, basically. And I've had to do a lot of work. I don't know how to give you specific feedback on this, but it's just been a lot of like money mindset work of what are my thoughts about money? What were my family beliefs about money? How does it feel to want money? How does it feel to want to make more money? How does it feel to charge a certain amount and tell people that call that this is what my fee is? Like, it's so much just about your mindset, right? And knowing that your value and your worth is kind of connected to that. Like I remember getting in private practice and even having people, like I started my practice charging, I think $125. And even when I would get that cash pay client that would come in and they charge that rate, like my heart would be racing, before that first session. And then they leave and their card would charge and it was no big deal. And I would think, oh, wow, they just paid like $125 to work with me. That's amazing. Like that's such a confidence boost. And I wish I would have started higher back then, but it's all process. But yeah, I think if we ignore that money isn't connected to our confidence or our ability to enjoy life, like it's not everything. I'm not going to say it's everything, but it makes a huge difference. And just really taking away the guilt around that and wanting that, then your opportunities kind of become limitless, right? And having a family is a big shift for me as well, because now it's not only about me. Like, I know I can survive off, little income. I can make it work. I can be scrappy, whatever. But when I have a partner and a child and I'm thinking about his future and I wanted to set him up for success, like that's my why. That's my huge motivator. It's just assuring a stable future for my family and my kid.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of it, right? When you have a partner, when you have a child, when you have different responsibilities than when it's just you individually, because you can survive. I know, like, my questions were, do I eat today or get gas? And when I was
Right.
a therapist, and I think a lot of people in the beginning stages have those same concepts depending on where they're working. Everyone's a little bit different, every situation's different, and it's gotten better over the years. Knock on wood, hopefully.
Little, yeah, maybe not a lot, but a little.
Depending on the state.
Yeah.
But I'm curious because being a wife, being a mother, running a successful private practice, starting a second business, what has motherhood and entrepreneurship been like for you and balancing the two or integrating? I don't like the word balance, but
Yeah, I like the word integrating as well, because I really think that that's what it is. Private practice has allowed me to have great boundaries, way better than when I worked in high crisis situations where we literally had a crisis phone that we had to keep on 24 hours a day and get calls in the middle of the night. Like, I don't have that in my private practice. And it's great for motherhood because I need those boundaries. And yes, being an entrepreneur, you can work a lot, but I'm home every day by 5. Mondays are flexible. For the first couple years of my kid's life, Mondays, he and I would just hang out and we'd play or go to the park or whatever. And I love having that flexibility and being able to do that in a private practice, and just being a business owner in general. You can do that. You can kind of flex your hours around your family. You do have to be intentional. I think if you're someone who is inclined to work a lot, like, you really do have to set your own boundaries and be aware of that. I worked so hard in my 20s that by the time I opened my private practice, I was like, I want to chill. I just want to chill. I
100%.
refuse to ever work over 40 hours. In my practice for the first, up until I started the second business, I have been working closer to 40 hours every week, but I was working like 30 hours a week, and I would close the door and go home, and I, like, it got a little boring. I'm going to be totally honest. Like, my business was so sustaining that I just focused on my family and all of the shifts that come with being a new parent and being a new mother, which I'm so glad I had the space to do that, because it's a big transition in your life. But by the time my kid he's 3 now, I was like, okay, I'm ready to kind of dive back into business stuff and have some new goals with my career. But that's just another reason why I love private practice, is once you get it off the ground, it really can be self-sustaining. So you can walk into work at 10 o'clock, you can leave by 4 or 5, you can make 6 figures a year with that schedule, and you can enjoy your life and you can enjoy your family. And people just don't even know that that's a possibility until they get in it.
Yes, absolutely. Because we don't know what we don't know. And especially if
Yeah.
you're not exposed to it. But I love that you're exposing it and talking about it and just being so authentic with the material you put out on social media. But you talked about goals, and I'm curious, what are your future aspirations or goals for both businesses?
Ooh, this is like a loaded question, because I have
Always.
I have too many, and that's my problem. I'm really working on focusing on one thing at a time. So I'm currently growing my private practice into a boutique therapy center, which essentially just means that it's going to be hyper focused, hyper specialized therapy center where we focus on relationships. So not necessarily working with only couples, but I'm very attachment focused. The people that work with me are attachment theory focused. And so we have specialized training kind of in our sub niches, and that's just what we do. So when people come in, they know that they're getting high quality care for their specific problem. We tend to see change a lot faster that way because we know what we're doing and working with the right fit kind of people. I definitely want to have some more contracted therapists come on. I have one right now. I'd like to get maybe a couple of more. I have one practicum student. I have another one coming in about a month. So I'm looking to do that. With my coaching business, I would love to do more one-on-one coaching. I haven't really opened that up yet. I'm just kind of doing group stuff and the course stuff. So I'd love to do more one-on-one of therapists that want to scale and really want to find ways to make money and use their skill set outside of just the therapy office. And yeah, I think my goal for the rest of this year and for next year is just to really get involved in my community. Like I just submitted a application to speak at our state conference this fall, so cross your fingers for me.
Love it.
But I love the community aspect of having a business, and Boise is a pretty exciting place because we've had so much growth. And I feel like I really had a strong community component when I first started my practice, and becoming a mom. Again, I just kind of focused on my family. So now I really want to get back into it. But there's some cool people doing exciting things here, and I like want to be a part of it and want to put mental health at the forefront and be able to maybe partner with some people or get involved in those kinds of ways.
I love it. And
Yeah.
I feel like the more goals we have, the more we can achieve all the things, but I get it, one focus at a time.
I have to remind myself that I have the rest of my life, right? I
It's
don't
like
have
we
to
want to
do
get
it all
everything done.
now. Yeah.
But with just all the experience you've had, all the people that you've helped, both professionally, personally, and everything else. But I'm curious, what are maybe your top 2 or 3 tips for entrepreneurs, whether they're starting out in therapy or another venture in entrepreneurship? What would you say are your top 2?
Much of success is about consistency, perseverance, and your mindset. So when you look at failure as failing, you're more likely to get beaten down and stop. You have to reframe what failure is. And I know this sounds kind of cliche, but you have to look at it as an opportunity for growth. And even though I had so many struggles early on in this field, people ask, like, if you go back, would you do it differently? And yeah, maybe life would be easier, but I also know that I wouldn't have as much knowledge as I have today. And I wouldn't have this mission that I have today. So I truly am grateful for the experiences that I had, because it's sort of evolved me into the person that I am. I also really believe that there is so much power in doing things scared, because you cannot wait until you have the confidence to do something before you do it. Like, you have to just do it and know that the confidence is going to come. I tell my practicum students that in this field, it feels a little bit like you're getting thrown into the deep end of the pool and you don't know how to swim. There's just no real way to prepare you for having that first session with a client and being like, what am I doing?
Yes.
So you kind of have to fake it till you make it. And I remember having a mantra for myself when I was younger, and I was feeling, can't believe I'm going to say this right now, but this is important. This is important. When I was struggling with confidence, and I would just repeat this mantra to myself: I am strong, I am confident, I am powerful, I am successful. I am strong, I am confident, I am powerful, I am successful. And these are all the things that I wanted to embody that I didn't believe at all at the time, but I just kept telling myself, kept telling myself. And I would show up like I had those things already. And I guess now I can say that I do have them, which is a pretty good feeling.
Yes. And I just want to go back to what you said about failure, because I think in school, like you're graded, you're told, okay, you have to get a certain grade to pass. And I think what I've learned, at least in entrepreneurship, and just to go off what you said, is that failure is an important piece of that journey, because if you hadn't had all those obstacles, you wouldn't be the person you are today. You wouldn't have all this knowledge. You wouldn't be able to help people in the way you're helping, because of all the traumatic events basically that you've experienced through supervisors, through personal stuff, through everything to get to this point. But that knowledge base is about giving back and just being able to really reframe the narrative that we might have had years ago, but being able to rewrite that story. And I mean, that's what we do in therapy. Like, you rewrite the
Mhm.
story, and it's the mindset. But I love what you're doing and how you're going about it, because it's different. And I think it's important. And I hope more people catch on to it as well. And so many people have, like you said, you've connected all over the world with other therapists that are doing it in their own way, their own style. And it's not conforming into a box, because I know when I was a therapist, I felt like I was trapped in a box and couldn't get
Yeah.
out of that box. And I'm sure there's other people that might feel that way, but you don't have to be stuck. I don't regret leaving, but I love that you've been able to really transform the field in the way you are. So I appreciate it. I love
Thank
it. I'm
you.
excited for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. And what you have done, despite all of your challenges, is really admirable as well. None of it is fair, right? But like you said, it is all a part of our story, and people are attracted to that as well. We love a good hero story. And if you can really own that and not be afraid to share it with others. I think just that in itself can give so much hope and inspiration to people who really feel like they're in the depths of it right now. Like this whole business coaching thing and kind of how I'm structuring my marketing for Aligned Therapy Shop has really been a gratitude practice, because I have to put myself back in the place that I was several years ago when I literally was so defeated, like thinking I spent $80,000 on my education that I'm about to throw out the window because I can't make it work. I cannot figure out how to make it work. And like you said, you feel like you're stuck in a box and there's so much red tape and everything is no. I heard way more no's than I heard yeses back in that time. And so I have to remember where I'm at now and just how grateful I am for everything that I have, and how stuck I was, and also feeling so much compassion for people that that's where they are right now. Like they're in that stuck place. Like, what did I get myself into? And so I hope that through what I'm doing, I can offer them a light of hope, some support, some education, some training, letting people know that you don't have to be a business guru to start a private practice. You don't have to have an MBA. It's way easier than we think it is. So
Yes.
hopefully, if that's one thing people can take from today's call, I hope that that's what they'll take, that truly anyone can do it. Any therapist can start a private practice. You just have to believe that you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is absolutely possible if people really believe in themselves, and knowing it is scary to have that first, like putting your shingle on the door and, okay, this is open for business, but
Mhm.
how that process can really evolve if you allow it to, and you don't have to stay stuck no matter where you are. If you really want something, you can go for it 110%. But I mean, as we talked about, school doesn't always prepare you for everything, no matter what industry it is, because it's that real life experience and all those experiences with your knowledge base. It's, of course, it's important to have theory background and all that, but being able to bridge it together so people don't have to struggle like you did, like I did, like other therapists that we personally know that have, whether they stay in the field or not. But I think it's important to know you're not limited. And that's like what I'm heard from you, seen on all your social media, just the conversations we've personally had. It's really being able to open yourself to the possibilities and not staying stuck, and having the resources that you have available and continue to just give back to the field. So I so appreciate you being on today, Krysteena. But where can people find you? We're going to link everything below, but if you could let us know too.
Yeah, so again, Instagram is my primary place where you're going to find the most information, and that's Align Therapy Shop. So at Align Therapy Shop on Instagram. My private practice website is treecitywellnessid.com, but I'm guessing that most of your listeners are probably going to be more interested in the Align Therapy Shop. So that's my hub for everything. I have a little link in my bio that has access to my store, both my course and my membership. And I have a free guide in there that offers 10 steps you can take to start your private practice.
Absolutely. Well, Krysteena, it's been so nice to see you again, just catching up, but I appreciate everything you're doing in this world to make therapy more accessible for mental health individuals as well that are in the field, therapists, counselors, any capacity that there is. I know there's so many different lingos nowadays, but I just know that you are making such a difference. I see it. I've seen your growth, and it's just an honor to have you on today.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you reaching out.
Of course. Well, make sure to like, subscribe, comment below what was the biggest takeaway from Krysteena today. I'm sure she would love to see that comment, and we'll see you on the next episode.